Israeli forces have attacked the Qasmiyeh Bridge. That's a key crossing linking Lebanon south to the rest of the country. President Joseph Aoun has called the attack a prelude to ground invasion. Israeli forces said the bridges are being used by Hezbollah and that they need to be destroyed to prevent attacks on northern Israel. Well, Israel continues to pound cities across the south, causing significant damage and even displacement. Heidi Pett reports from Tyr in southern Lebanon.
Earlier this afternoon, we witnessed the Israeli military targeting with a large airstrike the bridge on the main highway between Tyre and the north of the country. So this is the main arterial road connecting this part of southern Lebanon to the rest of the country. Now, this afternoon, we heard the roar of the jets come overhead and a huge explosion. In the aftermath of that, it seems that the span of the bridge was not totally destroyed. There were two large holes in it. So then a couple of hours later, Israeli warplanes once again returned and they have made a second attack on this key bridge. Now, this bridge is not the only one that has been struck by Israel in the last week. In fact, a number of bridges over the Litani River have been targeted over the last little while, ranging from this one, which is right down by the sea, all the way towards the eastern part of the Litani River. They've been taking out bridges on smaller secondary roads, but this one is a significant escalation. And what's also significant about this targeting of bridges is that it represents an expansion of the Israeli military campaign. They say that they're targeting Hezbollah, and previously the airstrikes and the ground operation and everything that has been claimed here in Lebanon, they say that they're taking out Hezbollah operatives, Hezbollah infrastructure, weapons dumps, things like this. These bridges and indeed the electricity substations that have also been targeted in recent days are civilian infrastructure that belongs to the Lebanese state, which is not a party to this conflict. In fact, the Lebanese state has signalled its intention to disarm Hezbollah. They have outlawed their military and security activities. Whether or not they're able to enforce that, it remains very much in question. And certainly since that decision was announced nearly 2 weeks ago now, we haven't seen any particular effort for that to happen. Now, human rights groups have been warning that this destruction, this targeting of civilian infrastructure may constitute a war crime. But this comes in the context of a number of airstrikes across southern Lebanon today, and also overnight there were strikes in the Bekaa Valley as this Israeli air campaign across the country continues.
All right, Obaida Hito is live for us in Beirut. So, Obaida, Lebanese President Joseph Aoun said Israel's attack on the bridge is a prelude to ground invasion. What's the latest, and why does the president think that?
Absolutely, a very strong condemnation from the Lebanese president, describing it as a kind of collective punishment. Now, from a humanitarian perspective, this is going to have huge implications for the Lebanese government. Breaking these bridges, the connection between the north and the south of the country is going to make it significantly more difficult for the Lebanese government to get humanitarian aid to people south of the Litani River. As you know, there's over 1 million people displaced in the country south of the Litani River. There still are civilians living in those areas, most of them in shelters like schools and hospitals and other temporary shelters. But with these bridges broken, it's going to be very difficult for the government to reach them. Also, the president mentioned that the international community should intervene and make sure that Israel doesn't use this issue of the presence of Hezbollah as a pretext to carry out this cleansing, if you will, of these southern areas. We heard from the Israeli Ministry of Defense today that they gave orders to destroy Rafah style all of the villages and towns on the border areas. So the president, rightfully so, is very concerned about this policy that the Ministry of Defense in Israel is pursuing now in the southern parts of Lebanon, calling this invasion illegal, making sure that this mass displacement doesn't turn also into a mass destruction of southern Lebanon. The situation continues to intensify in the south of the country. Dozens of airstrikes in different parts of the south of Lebanon, especially in the Khiam region. There are intense battles going on between Hezbollah and the IDF inside Lebanese territory. There is also ongoing fighting in places like Naqoura, all the way in the western front near the Israeli border. And it looks like that the IDF has intentions to intensify its ground operation. And that's extremely concerning for the Lebanese government, as Heidi mentioned, who's trying to create distance between itself and the Hezbollah operations, which it says says are illegal and should stop. But until that happens, it seems like Israel is intent on creating this sense of panic and mass destruction in southern Lebanon.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, as we can see there with those bridges, targeting civilian infrastructure, and that's the real concern, as you mentioned, a lot of people that have been displaced from their homes. But what about the situation where you are? Beirut has also been subject to massive attacks in some areas. People have been forced out of their homes, sleeping on the streets. Where are we with that in terms of them receiving aid? Where are they going? Can you just give us a sense of what's happening where you are?
Well, the government has opened over 600 temporary shelters around the country, but the number of people that have been displaced is over 1 million. It's a huge number of people. Every fourth person in Lebanon essentially is now an internally displaced refugee. And so this is a huge humanitarian crisis for the Lebanese government, which is already facing economic pressures inside the country. So they're having trouble responding to all of this. Even though things remain calm here in Beirut, the situation is definitely tense. In the areas behind me that are sort of dark, you can see here there's a whole section of the city. They call it the southern suburbs of Beirut. They're completely dark. And many of the streets here in Beirut are completely dark because people are afraid of the ongoing strikes. Even though things have been calm, relatively calm here in Beirut, a couple nights ago, there were 2 strikes in the southern suburbs. There is always concern of more strikes because evacuation orders by Israel have forced hundreds of thousands of people out of this neighborhood, out of these neighborhoods here in the southern suburbs for now more than 2 weeks. People don't know when they're going to go back home. As you mentioned, there are tens of thousands of people living in tents on the sides of the streets in temporary shelters, many of them here in Beirut because people think it's safer here. But how long is that going to last? How long is it going to be before Israel carries out those kinds of strikes here in the southern suburbs or in other parts of northern Lebanon is unclear. And this is why people are definitely feeling very nervous about what the coming days are going to look like.
Yeah, thanks very much. That's the latest update from Lebanon. Ubaida Hito there, thank you. Well, as Ubaida was saying, the violence has displaced more than 1 million Lebanese, and some are living with family or friends or even in hotels, government shelters and on the streets. And while the country remains deeply sectarian, many people have found refuge with members of other religious communities. As Bernard Smith reports from Jazeera, that's in southern Lebanon.
Churches are often seen as places of refuge, but in deeply sectarian Lebanon, a church offering shelter to Shia Muslim families is unusual. Father Boutros Akori says when they saw people fleeing with nowhere to go, they had to do something. It's the first time in any conflict the monastery has opened its doors like this.
Political parties and divisions have split the sects, with each group taking its own side. Even we as a monastery were criticized by some people who questioned how we could host people who might be one day against us. But for us, the priority remains the human being.
St. Peter and Paul's monastery in southern Lebanon is sheltered from the fighting by the hills that surround it. But this is what people are escaping, just a 30-minute drive away. Towns and villages bombarded by Israeli airstrikes targeting Hezbollah positions.
We woke up to the sound of strikes. We were asleep. The first strike hit our village at around 2 a.m. We waited until we realized there was a war. Then we left. We spent the whole day on the road.
We hope to live in Lebanon hand in hand, without sectarianism, without political divisions. We hope to return to our villages soon for the war to end and for Lebanon to change for the better.
There are 18 religious sects recognized in Lebanon: Christian, Muslim and Jewish.
I'm Christian and she's Muslim. We live together here and we cook together and we are all family.
Because Lebanon's state is so weak, people rely on their sects for jobs, for social welfare, for education, and that perpetuates division. This sort of cross-sect engagement is unusual, if welcome. St. Peter and Paul's is the only church sheltering Shia Muslims in this part of Lebanon, though there are some others in Beirut as well as Sunni Muslim mosques. They are the exceptions rather than the rule. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera, Jazeera, southern Lebanon.
watching Al Jazeera, and here's a reminder of our top stories this hour. Iran has rebuffed the US's threat to bomb its power plants if it doesn't reopen the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours. It's vowed to block the strait indefinitely and strike back against energy and desalination facilities in the region if attacked. The Israeli military says more missiles and rockets have been launched at the country, both from Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon. These are some of the latest images from northern Israel. Earlier, police said an Iranian missile struck a closed kindergarten south of Tel Aviv. Israeli airstrikes have targeted the Qasmiyeh Bridge in southern Lebanon across the Litani River. Israel says they're being used by Hezbollah. Separate Israeli airstrikes on Sunday